All right. So, what is it that we are looking for you to do? Well, using what you've already figured out from exercise 3, knowing what your overall heat gain rates are, so your cooling loads, we're going to try and design our space to actually use as much natural ventilation as possible. So, we're looking from your cooling loads to your heat gains. We're then going to actually design your house to add the ventilation strategies that you want. We want you to explore options. So, we're going to size this for stack ventilation. We're going to size it for cross ventilation. See which one works best for your designs. Maybe it's one, maybe it's the other, or maybe it's both. And there is a way that we can actually implement both. We're going to go through that as well today. So you can implement both strategies. It's all up to you guys on what it is your criteria may be. Remember, cross ventilation is incredibly easy to actually use and allow your users to understand how to operate. Open a window on both sides of the house, wind flows through, it's pretty easy for everyone to understand. The only problem is that it doesn't work when there is no wind. That's the only time it doesn't work. So if there's no wind, the strategy fails. With stack ventilation, no matter what, as long as the sun is out, the strategy will work because it's going to help heat up that chimney and all of the air inside to create that vacuum pressure inside your space and draw air in. So maybe it's best that you actually utilize both because your stack ventilation is not going to work as effectively at night unless there is that wind. And even if there is that wind, it's still not going to work as effectively. So perhaps you do utilize both to say, okay, if one of them fails, you're still going to have enough natural ventilation to help cool the space to at least feel comfortable, maybe a little bit warm, but you're not going to really complain too much. You're still going to have airflow and it's not going to be just completely stagnant inside. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to look at a couple of different options. We're then going to show how those strategies are going to work throughout the year using our psychrometric charts. We obviously want to make sure that we don't cause any discomfort with any amount of increased wind. So how do you control the wind? Provide some sort of description or explanation of that, even a diagram if you have to. Compare your pros and cons for the couple of different options that you explore. Again, we want at least 2 options for you to explore. And then you're eventually going to choose a strategy and design it. Design it into your space. Use it on the flow table after you've designed it and you've seen what needs to change based off your current iteration. Or you can use Autodesk Flow Design. And then obviously all the other stuff that we already know needs to be included, so all the graphs, the citations, all of that extra BS. Pretty simple, very straightforward. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. For our first strategy we're going to be looking at is stack ventilation. And if you needed a little bit of a diagram of how it works, here's a little bit of a diagram of how it works, just as a quick reminder. Now, with stack ventilation, what you need to figure out is how much heat gain you have and how tall do you want to make your overall chimney. And your chimney is going to be from the inlet of the chimney to the outlet of the chimney. So this distance right here in this diagram. So obviously with this particular design, that is very, very ridiculously short, which means we're going to need an absolutely huge chimney. Now, obviously, your heat gain rate is coming from exercise 3. whatever your cooling loads are, that was from exercise 3. So who here remembers what their cooling loads were from their building just off of the top of their head? And it really doesn't matter, just throw a number out. 14? Okay, I'm going to go with 14. So let's say from exercise 3, I've got a cooling load of 14 BTUs per hour per square foot. So 14 BTUs per hour per square foot. I need to draw that on this particular diagram. So here we've got 10 BTUs, here we've got 20 BTUs, 30, 40, and 50. So obviously we're somewhere between 10 and 20. Most of you are going to fall somewhere in that range. Some of you might be a little bit lower, some of you might be just a little bit higher. That's okay. So 14, we're just a little bit shy of halfway, so I'm going to just kind of eyeball here, halfway between these lines, and just essentially draw all the way through. So there we go, 14 BTUs, more or less. Now, how tall do we want to make our chimney? How tall? 8 feet? All right, we'll go 8 feet. Why not? 8 feet. So we got 10 feet, 2, 4, 6, 8. So 8 feet right here. We draw a line all the way across until we intersect our other line, right about here, and it comes straight down, and that gives us our overall percent compared to our floor area, our cross-sectional area. So if I were to draw an actual plan view of this particular chimney, if I were to draw a plan view of this particular chimney, it'd be something shaped like this, some sort of length times a width. This would be our cross-sectional area. So I need a percent of about 11% total. Now again, this does not have to be one single chimney. This could be multiple chimneys. So, for our stack ventilation requirement, I know it says design wind speed, we're going to cross that out, and we're going to put tower height. So our stack height, it's actually called stack height. We'll name it exactly the same thing that it's actually called here. So our stack height is 8 feet. Our inlet, our outlet area is 11%. Next, we've got our building area, and if you want to, you can have it to where your building is zoned, just like you have for your heating requirements. You can do the exact same zones for cooling, so if you want to have multiple strategies that are utilized at different times of the day, you can, or you can consider the entire building as one. So in this case, my building area is approximately 1,500 square feet. That's my overall house. So that means with 11% of 1,500 square feet, I'm going to need 165 square feet of cross-sectional area. So 165 165 square feet of area here inside the chimney. So inside of here I need 165. I will also need to make sure that for my inlet into the chimney I have at least 165. I'll also need to make sure that my windows are at least 165 square feet. And the outlet is at least 165 square feet. At least that's what we would like to have ideally. No matter what, we're going to have this one for certain. But you do not have to make all of these exactly the same. Realistically, you're actually going to want to, as air flows through the space, you're going to want to increase the area. So you actually want your windows to be the smallest area, your inlet to be a little bit larger, your cross-sectional area in your chimney to be a little bit larger, and your outlet to be a little bit larger. So in this case, you might have it to where your chimney's 165 square feet, your outlet might be, or your inlet, I should say, might be around 150 square feet, no more than 10% difference. Your windows can be, about 140 square feet, again, no more than 10% different. And your outlet might be a little bit bigger, maybe 175 to 180 square feet. Again, what that's going to do is it's going to allow the air to slow down as it moves through the space. Because you're going to have a certain volume of air enter this space at a certain speed, that volume of air now enters into a larger space, so it's actually going to be able to slow down and be able to accommodate that larger overall volume. It's going to enter the chimney, it's going to go a little bit slower. The outlet, it's going to run a little bit slower. You're also going to make sure that there's going to be no high pressure effect inside the building itself. So you're not going to have to worry about anything blowing out because of the amount of wind that's inside the actual space. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right, that resized everything for stack ventilation if we did the entire building. Again, stupid simple, isn't it? Yes?
At 165, so you said we could spread it out over multiple?
You could spread it out over multiple, yes. So if you say you did 4 of them and you made them all, 45 square feet each, you would have more than the 165 combined.
Okay.
Yes?
I didn't know you said that the Autodesk Pro program works on the planar level, right?
You can still use stack ventilation even with Autodesk Flow. Instead of looking at it at a planar level, you would actually be looking at it at a sectional level. Okay? Any other questions? All right. Next, we've got size openings for cross ventilation. For this one, we still need the same heat gain rates that we already have figured out, so our 14 BTUs. But in this case, we're going to need to know what is our design wind speed. And for this, we need to figure out which month we are actually going to be designing off of. And figure out, okay, what is the average wind speed for that particular month? So let's look at April for Las Vegas. April, we have a wind speed average of just over 15 miles per hour. I believe it's 15.3 miles per hour. And this you can get off of that meteorological data that we found out in exercise 1. So get this off of exercise 1. Yes,
You want us to reference it?
if you can.
Are we designing just for 1 month, the exercise, or a whole year?
That's up to you. Now, this 15.3 is taken at McCarran Airport, where it's 32 feet off the ground in completely open fields. So we need to adjust for that. So we need to know what kind of condition are we designing with, and how high are our openings off of the ground. Now, in this case, we're looking for what's the height from ground level to center of our opening. So, what kind of condition do you think our particular site falls in? Do you think it's a large city center, suburban, rural, airport, or somewhere at the beach? I could easily argue that it's somewhere suburban, maybe somewhere even between suburban and large city center.
It's the beach.
If you say it's the beach, then I want a damn good explanation of how you came up with that. All right. Now, how high are our windows? I really don't care, just throw a number out. 5 feet? I'm okay with that, so 5 feet. So 0 to 8 feet, we're going to be just above halfway. Draw our line straight across. Where we intersect suburban, go straight down. So I'm going to say we're at about 40% of our actual measurable wind speed. So we take 40%, multiply it by our overall wind speed. So 40% times 15.3, or whatever it is that you actually get from your meteorological data. So that gives us a designed wind speed of 6.12. If you want to go ahead and say it's 6, just to make life simple, let's say it's 6. Now, notice that with our cross ventilation strategies, the slower the wind speed, the larger our openings are going to be. So if you want to make an adjustment off of this, because you don't think that, oh, we're going to be at actually 6 miles per hour that often, by all means you can. Just explain what your decision making is. So if you want to design off of 4 miles per hour because you want to capture more conditions that would likely occur, tell me. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to design off of 6 miles per hour. So let's draw our line at our 14 BTUs, just shy of halfway. And we've got 6 miles per hour. Come straight across, and where we intersect, we're going to draw our line straight down. Two and a half percent. Now again, this is 2.5% inlet and 2.5% for outlet. So we're going to actually have combined between the two at least 5%, which meets our code minimum. So yes, even though when we actually draw this out, we're less than this 5% code minimum operable, we're actually providing 2.5 for inlet and our 2.5 for outlet. So that means 2.5 for our inlet, 2.5%. Our building area still has not changed. Which means we're going to need 37.5 square feet of operable inlet and operable outlet. Yes?
So that just means of the windows you have 37 square feet needs to be operable between either end to allow flow.
That is correct. And to make it to where you're going to flush out those 14 BTUs worth of heat load being added into your building. Now, within exercise 3, I know we calculated it with our envelope, your people and equipment, your lighting, and for either infiltration or ventilation. Remember, you can go ahead and exclude that infiltration and ventilation because we're not actually going to be gaining any form of heat through our ventilation. We're just going to allow the building to be open and it's just going to flow straight through. So it's never actually going to cause any heat gains inside of the actual building. So your heat gain is going to be the same as your exercise 3 minus your ventilation. So do remember that. And that's for both cross or stack. So you can see that cross ventilation, as far as a strategy goes, is definitely a lot better. But remember, it's going to work only if we have at the bare minimum 6 miles per hour worth of wind. So that means we have to have at least the average amount of wind. If there's anything less than 6 miles per hour, it's not going to work. This is again where you guys can make the decision. Do I go ahead and design with something a little bit smaller? That way I have a larger overall inlet and outlet area. Or do I just say I'm going to design with 37.5 square feet and that's it? Again, that's up for you guys to decide. And then we just size for cross ventilation. Again, pretty simple, isn't it? Now, what if I want to combine the two strategies? Wouldn't it be ridiculously simple for us to just say, oh, I'm going to take 50% of it and design for cross ventilation and 50% for stack ventilation and just have everything? Yes, it would be ridiculously simple, but it's not that easy. I really wish it was. Unfortunately, wind does not work that way. Wind, as we know it, is a fluid. It moves, and it always changes. We can't directly say, hey, wind, as you enter the building, only half of you go this way, half of you go this way. It never works that way. Again, it flows however the hell it wants. So, if you're going to combine the strategies, it's not going to be just, oh, I want 50 or 40% this and 50 or 60% this. We actually need to figure out which strategy do we want as our primary design, and then we'll design the secondary system afterwards. Okay? So we need to first decide which strategy do we want to design with first. Do we want to design for cross ventilation or stack ventilation? Cross? All right, let's say we're going to start with cross ventilation. All right, we first want to say, okay, we've already figured out exactly how much we need if we did 100% cross ventilation. So let's say we're going to design for something a little bit less. Let's say for whatever reason, I'm not able to provide 37.5 for both my inlet and outlet in my space, even though it's a ridiculously low number and it should be relatively easy. Let's say that instead of 37.5, I can only design for 20 square feet. So we're going to design for whatever our maximum square footage is going to be for either strategy. It doesn't matter which one you choose. It just needs to be less than what it would be if it were 100% one strategy or 100% another strategy. So, we've got our stack ventilation. We're going to have our stack height. We're starting cross, never mind. So we're going to do cross ventilation. Design wind speed, we had our 6 miles per hour that we've already designed. 20 square feet, we need to figure out what percent that is. So, we've got our cross ventilation, we're only providing 20 square feet. We've got our building area at 1,500 square feet. How many percent is 20 divided by 1,500? We're working backwards. So we're at about 1.33 repeating, so 1.33%. Now let's find out how much heat does that already get rid of for us. So let's look at our cross ventilation. We've got 1.33%. We draw a line straight up. We draw a line at 6 miles per hour. And where we intersect, that tells us how much heat our cross ventilation strategy is getting rid of. So in this case, I'm going to say, yeah, if I actually drew this straight, it'd probably be just less than 10. But to make life easy, let's say that it gets rid of 10 BTUs per hour. Again, it would be incredibly simple if we just said, oh yeah, the other 4 BTUs are going to come from our stack ventilation. Again, wind doesn't work that way. We're going to need to oversize our stack ventilation in case the wind kind of shifts from one to another. That's where this graph comes in. So what we have here is our overall cooling rate from cross and stack ventilation that we want. This is what our overall heat gain is going to be. So in this case, we've got our 14 BTUs that we have to get rid of. Over here on the left, we have our cooling rate from only our cross ventilation. And each one of these other lines is the cooling rate for our stack ventilation. So we have our 14 BTUs that we have to get rid of. We've got our 10 BTUs that we have from cross ventilation. We're just going to draw these two lines where they intersect. So in this case, we're pretty much on top of another 10 BTUs that we have to design for stack ventilation as well. And again, it's not where we can just combine the two and say, oh, all of a sudden now I'm getting rid of 20 BTUs total. No, the way that the wind is going to work is it's going to sometimes favor more towards cross ventilation. So it might be, more of like 8, 9, and possibly all the way up to 10 BTUs, with the remaining coming towards stack ventilation. Or it might be going, 8 or 9 BTUs towards stack ventilation, and the remaining will be cross. It's just how fluid wind is. So in this case, we're going to design for 10 BTUs for our stack ventilation. We can go ahead and highlight that here. 10 BTUs per stack. We still have our 8-foot height. 8 feet, we come all the way across. Where we intersect, come down. That tells us that we need 7%. Our building area is still 1,500 square feet. That tells us that we're going to need 105 square feet worth of stack ventilation. Yes?
So if we start with the stack first, we usually got 165 square footage, we would have to start with a smaller maximum than that.
You could actually, so our stack ventilation, we figured, we had that, what was it? It was 165, yeah. So just something that's smaller than the 165. So let's say you did stack and you could only do 100. That's the maximum that you could possibly design for and still make it to where, it meets your aesthetics or code reasons or cost or whatever it is that you make as your limitation. Let's say that I can only do 100 square feet. You would then go 100 square feet, figure out what that percent is, figure out how many BTUs that gets rid of, come down here, and we would, instead of going with our cross ventilation, we would draw, okay, what's the BTUs that's coming from our stack, draw our line for 14%, where it intersects, come across for cross, and then move forward. Yes?
If we wanted to do zones, would we still use this, or would we?
No, you would do the entire packet multiple times. So if you do it towards a zone where no air can pass through between your zones, then you would design for one zone, size everything, and then for the other zone, size everything. You can still do that even if air does pass through. It just makes it to where it's a little bit more messy, but hey, you still sized everything for what you intended for. Yes?
The 20 square foot, that's the area you're designing the windows?
That would be for just my cross ventilation. So this, I would have 20 square feet of inlet and 20 square feet of outlet for just cross ventilation. Then I would need an additional 105 square feet, just a little bit shy, because we want to make it to where our inlet is a little bit smaller than our overall chimney for the air as far as my stack ventilation strategy goes. But by combining these two strategies, I'm making it to where, okay, when I have 6 mile per hour wind, or if it's at night and I'm still having some wind, I'm still able to cool the interior even if it is warm, because my stack ventilation doesn't work at night. I don't have that heating in that chimney anymore. But if I have, slower winds and it's during the day, my stack ventilation can kind of take over a little bit more. So this gives me the best of both worlds as much as I possibly can. Any other questions? And again, this is the overall open area. So this does not take into account the fact that I have windows that, you know, might be taking up some of that open area or that non-open area. So, you know, it's talking about where wind can actually flow through my opening. So that does not necessarily mean that I need a 20 square foot window. I might need a 50 square foot window because only 20 square feet actually operates. Okay? And it also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to design it for windows. It could be anything that allows air to enter into the actual space. It could be a door, it could be louvers, it could be whatever it is that you can imagine, as long as it allows air to come into the space. Any questions on that? All right, there, we just went through the exercise.